Hello and welcome as we continue our chronological read through of the Bible. Moses is continuing his instructions. Remember, this is a rather long sermon that we're in the middle of here. He's continuing his instructions to the people as they prepare to enter the promised land. Today's reading opens with a special issue of an unsolved murder and the guilt that it brings to the land whenever someone is murdered, even if you remember Cain murdering Abel, that brought guilt to the land. Even though the murderer is unknown, the land must still be purged of the guilt brought on by that person's murder, by the death. So Moses details a ritual to be carried out by the elders of the city closest to the site of the murder to do just that by executing a heifer, that would be a young female cow, as a substitute for the criminal. Moses then details how a woman taken captive, whom someone desires for his wife, is to be treated. Obviously, this would be during the time of war. The idea is really pretty straightforward. The person cannot be taken as a sex slave or as property, but they're to be taken with dignity. So time must pass, so the soldier's not just acting in passion or simple lust. The woman is to be purified. Actually, there's 30 days involved in that. Her status as a captive is removed. That's symbolized by changing of her clothing. And after all of that has been fulfilled, then they're married in every sense of the term. If he decides not to marry her sometime during that 30-day waiting period, then she needs to be released. She can't be sold. So you can see the concern here for the dignity of the woman, even a captive in this particular case. Moses explains that the special rights of the firstborn son can't be given to another simply because a man has multiple wives and he happens to love one wife more than the other. The firstborn is the firstborn, and that's all there is to it. If someone is the firstborn male is the firstborn male, and that's all there is to it. If someone's punished by hanging, the body has to come down from the tree before the sun sets. He has to be buried that same day. You may remember the great concern that the Jews had that Jesus and the others crucified with him be removed from the crosses before the Sabbath. The next day began that evening. If you recall, the day begins in the evening for the Jews. Chapters 22 and 23 continue this dealing with what almost seems like a lot of random topics. It deals with a whole host of special cases. What to do if, those types of situations. Oh, the situations are all over the map. They range from making railings on your roof. Remember, they would have flat roofs so that no one falls from it, to prohibition against cross-dressing, from how to deal with rape in the community, to not mixing wool and linen in your cloth, or different types of grapes in a vineyard. Moses details various situations that would result in someone being excluded from the assembly, and he gives rules for keeping the camp of soldiers pure during a war campaign. There's to be no ritual prostitution of any kind in Israel, nor can the proceeds from prostitution be used for anything associated with the temple. Actually, I said ritual prostitution because that's basically what the primary thing was, but there was to be no prostitution, period, in Israel. Let's see, charging of interest to fellow Israelite is forbidden. You could charge interest to a foreigner, but not to a fellow Israelite. It was permissible to eat grapes from someone else's vineyard, but not to carry them away in a container. So you could eat what you could while you were there, but you couldn't carry them away. In the same way, it's permissible to pluck heads of grain from a field, but not to harvest in any significant quantity other than what you would eat there on the spot. Notice how God repeats this underlying theme that he's providing for his people through the land. He's providing for everyone. No one's to be deprived, even if it's even while at the same time, it's important to recognize that each person, each individual family, each individual farmer, shall we say, should be able to profit from their own labor. And yet that labor is something that God is blessing, and everyone is able to partake of it. You might remember the Pharisees getting quite upset with Jesus that his disciples were plucking grain and eating it as they walked through or at least by a field. Now, it wasn't because they were taking someone else's grain. Clearly, that's sanctioned right here by God. But it was because they were breaking the various man-made rules that had come to dominate the Sabbath activities. So there's a lot of things in today's reading, just all kinds of various miscellaneous things. And hopefully you can take the time to read it and to learn and to grow from it, especially to grow in understanding for how the people first responded to Jesus and his followers, because a lot of the things that you'll read in there are things that you might see popping up throughout the Gospels and so on as well. May God continue to be with you, to bless you as you do these readings. I know today is a little bit scattered, kind of a shotgun approach almost, but still there's lots of things in there that I think you'll find intriguing and interesting. I look forward to joining you again tomorrow.